guys, how's it going? Welcome back. We are on lesson 4 now, jumping right in, working with audio. So now that we know the difference between audio and MIDI, let's start working with some audio in Ableton and get a groove going. It'll be a simple track for now, but a track that can be used to demonstrate how to work with audio in Ableton. The best way to absorb these concepts is to get hands-on with Ableton as we go. So please join in with me, follow along, and start building out a track of your own and working with audio on your end in your Ableton. All right, so the track you just heard, the way that I got to that track, I'm about to demonstrate right now. So first things first, the best way to grab some audio and just start working with audio in Ableton is to just go to the samples area over here in the browser and start demoing out some samples. Okay, and what I'm looking for right now is just something to get me inspired. So
around
talk.
Check this.
Open your eyes.
Ooh, I like that right there.
Open your eyes.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just simply going to drag that into an empty clip slot in any audio track. I'm obviously on the default session right now, so I've got one audio track, one MIDI track. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that MIDI track right now and put in a couple more audio tracks here. Now, of course, you can do that with a right click and insert audio track. You can do that with Command T. That's the key command shortcut for that, or you can go create insert audio track, either way. So I've got a bunch of audio tracks here, so I've got plenty of room to work with. I'm gonna cue that up, give it a listen.
Open your eyes.
You'll notice that when I dragged that in, my session tempo went from 120 down to 89.48. That's based on this simple warping that Ableton did. What is warping, you might ask? Well, warping is what Ableton will do. It'll take any audio content that you throw at it. As long as it's got some kind of rhythmic content, even non-rhythmic content, it'll try and guess the BPM of, but mostly rhythmic content. So that could be drums, that could be pads, that could be a bass line, a lead line, vocals, such as this one.
Open your.
Okay? Ableton will take its best guess at warping that content, as long as it is not a entire track or a long loop, okay? And we've obviously set that up previously in our record warp launch preferences right here. Auto warp long samples is off, and default warp mode is going to be beats, okay? So in beats warp mode, Ableton is going to guess the BPM based on transients. Now, because this is a vocal clip, okay, it's not a drum loop or a rhythmic loop of any kind, percussion, what have you. I'm gonna not wanna be in beats mode. I'm gonna wanna be in tones mode, okay? And just because I've auto-warped this sample by dragging it in because it's a shorter sample and it changed my session BPM, I actually wanna be up around 125. For this beat. I kind of feel like making something a little bit groovy, maybe a little bit techy, and I like odd numbers in the 120 range. So let's get started there. We've got a little vocal loop, okay? On any kind of tonal material, such as this vocal right here, I'm gonna wanna be in tones mode, okay? On any rhythmic material, I'm gonna wanna be in beats mode, and on any textured material, I'm gonna wanna be in texture mode. I know, obvious, right? What is textured material? When I say that, I mean granulated stuff, atmospherics, pads, soundscapes, grinding noises, stuff that doesn't really have rhythm and it doesn't really have a tone to it, doesn't really have a pitch, okay? So we've got a vocal sample.
Open your eyes. Open your eyes.
And what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to half the BPM of this.
Open your eyes.
Excuse me, I'm going to double the BPM of that so that it'll play out slower. Now, the best way to start working with audio in Ableton is to enable your metronome up here and give it a whirl.
Open your eyes.
and see if your loop is on the beat. Now my loop sounds a little bit off the beat.
Open your eyes.
I kind of want that. Open your eyes. So for the purposes of this exercise, I'm going to work this vocal into the beat grid to show you the concept of warping. Okay, so O is right here.
Open.
I'm gonna right click that, set 1-1 here.
Open.
And this pen right here, anytime you see, okay, one of these little arrows that turns into a kind of a pseudo warp marker. That's what these yellow arrows, down pointing arrows, are called, warp markers. And that's going to tell Ableton where the grid is on your sample. Most times it's gonna get it right. On a sample like this, I'm gonna kind of tell Ableton and define where I want my grid to be. So I'm just gonna double click on any one of these arrows. You'll notice that it's going to be pretty smart about where it places these educated guesses, okay? So this pen, I would be willing to bet.
Open.
Change my default quantization down to 1/16 so that I can hear
Open.
smaller resolutions of this audio.
Open. Open. Open.
And this yaw right here.
Open your eyes.
And I'm just gonna stretch that out a little bit there too.
Open your eyes.
Nope, too much. So open your
eyes.
A little bit back here. It sounded a little bit grainy.
Open your
Put one here.
Open your eyes.
Now you'll notice that it sounds a little bit grainy in this area.
Open your eyes.
So I'm gonna try and counteract some of that graininess. And if you just hold down Alt or Option on your keyboard, you can get fine-tune adjustment. Otherwise, you'll notice that these warp markers will snap to whatever grid resolution you have.
Open your eyes. 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 Open your eyes.
So the way that I'm gonna get rid of that graininess is that I'm gonna go down here to this, put it in tones mode.
Open your eyes.
Already a lot of that has been removed, that grittiness, that graininess, that artifacting. I'm gonna mess with the grain size here.
Open your eyes. Open your eyes. Open your eyes. Open.
That's good enough for now, okay? And all I'm gonna do down here as well is just make sure that the length of my looped audio for now is on an even bar amount. So I'm just gonna type in 2, hit tab to get to the next field, hit 0, tab to get to the next field one more time and hit 0, and then hit enter. You'll notice that my loop length over here has changed, and now this should loop much better against our grid we have set up here, 125.
Open your eyes.
You can hear the
Open your eyes.
perfect, right on grid, exactly how I want it. Okay, so I'm gonna drag that over here, get that out of the way, and I'm gonna go grab some drums. Get the rhythm going a little bit, get the beat going, okay? And I have gone through the drums and a lot of the loops in Ableton, and I kind of just want something fresh. I want something a little bit new, a little bit updated, and something that not everyone in Ableton is gonna have. So just a heads up, we're going to begin by using loops because I want you to enjoy the process of making music right out of the gate and really catch the bug before I show you how to make your own loops, which ultimately should be what you're doing most often instead of using pre-made loops. So what I did was I went to functionloops.com, okay? I went to free samples, okay? And I downloaded 2 packs. I downloaded the Tech House Bass and Drums pack, and I downloaded the Sharp Sampler free pack. And the way you can do that is you just right-click this, or just click it straight up. And for each one of these, it's gonna have a product page, and then you just hit free download. It'll take you to a payloads.com. So basically what this is it's a straight trade, your email, and they'll give you a great starter pack with some drums and some other loops, some bass loops, some synth loops, song starters, okay? For free. You're just basically giving them an email so they can send you promotional emails later on. So it's up to you whether you want these samples. The ones I'll be using, like I said again, are the Tech House Bass and Drums and the Sharp Sampler. So again, I just went to both pages, put in my email. I got 2 emails at my email address. I clicked the download link in both of those emails and got those packs. So once those packs are fully downloaded using those download links they're gonna email to you, what you can do is unzip them and then place them in a folder on your hard drive. Then go into Ableton, add a place to your sidebar in Ableton in your browser, navigate to where those samples are sitting on your hard drive, click open, and it will add that folder to your sidebar under places in the browser in Ableton for quick and convenient access. So now what I can do is I can go through some of these loops. Now remember, again, I'm gonna leave the metronome on for now, okay? But what I can do is I can demo these out just by clicking on them. So I'm gonna start at the bottom actually. These are 125, more in the BPM that I was looking for. And use the arrow keys to get between these. Yep, not quite right yet. That could work. Number 22. Ooh. That's where it's at right there. I really dig that one. Okay, so I'm just gonna drop that one in there. And now that I have a drum loop going, I can kill the metronome. Just be conscious of your levels as you're making your beat, as you're constructing your most basic elements. You're gonna wanna make sure this number over here isn't over 0 and that it's above -6 as you're working, okay? So what I just did right here, let's press play. And I'm just gonna turn this down. This is a little bit too loud, drum loop. And this loop right here, I'm going to make it sound the right level against my drum loop. Sounds pretty good, above -6. Everything's looking good so far. All right, let's go find some other loops here. Now, quick note, this drum loop right here, okay? Notice how it is automatically warped and it guessed the segment BPM correctly right here, and it automatically put it into beats mode, and that's what I want because it's rhythmic material, it's drums, okay? So it's warped automatically, guess the segment BPM, this clip right here, BPM, just fine, and I don't need to alter these at all because if I turn my metronome on, mute this track, and press play, that drum beat is perfectly on the metronome, so I know I'm good to go. Now, instead of using the metronome to find out where the drums are sitting, I'm going to use the drums to find out where everything else is sitting. So the drums have effectively become my metronome. One more note really quickly is you're gonna wanna make sure that delay compensation and reduced latency when monitoring are on at this point. You don't want things to start going out of out of time with each other. So just make sure delay compensation's on. Okay, got a drum beat. Awesome. Let's go into this Sharp label sampler free kit and see if we can't find something good. So I'm gonna take a guess that this audio right here is either in the key of F or in the key of A, because that's the way they usually notate these type of things. So if I went into kit here, see it says 07 bass riff, dry, A dry. So definitely gonna come back and use that one. I like that. So if I just click the next disclosure arrow here, you'll notice how it's kind of an either or thing. If I hold down Command while doing that, it's gonna allow me to open up as many of these as I want. Like that a lot. Perfect. I'm gonna drop that in, drop the volume down on that. See how that bass line sounds? Put this back to 1 bar quantized, because what I'm gonna do is click it right now, and it's gonna play in time with my track that I've already have going. Drop that in. Let's see what the more affected version, the more wet version sounds like of this composition. Turn that down a little bit. Now, just so I can see the difference here, I'm going to drag those up, and I'm also going to start color coding these as I go. Okay, so actually I'm going to make that more of an orange color, and the wet version just a little bit darker of an orange here. Drums. Okay. I just hit Command D there to duplicate. You can duplicate anything in Ableton using Command D. Let's hear how this vocal sample is sitting against these audio parts. Just gonna drop that in there. Now, notice that each one of these clips that I'm dragging in, dry and wet of the same clip is fine, but any variations or any new parts, any new audio that you're dragging in, you're gonna wanna put those loops on a new audio track pretty much always. There are a few exceptions, but a good rule of thumb is anytime you have a new audio loop that isn't playing the exact same thing, maybe one more affected and one less affected, just drop it onto a new track, okay? Let's see how this sounds. Now, I've got all of these set to beats mode by default, okay? Now, while I'm warping here, I want to take a second and talk about how Ableton does warping. So it's going to guess at the BPM of this audio material when you drag it in. But if you know the audio material is at 128, just go ahead and go down here and type in 128. And if it's a tonal material, such as this, which is going to be it's got melodics to it, right? So it has some rhythmic, some beat-based material, but it's mostly tonal material. So you're gonna want to put the warping into tones mode, okay? Let's see how those play together.
Open your eyes.
Put the wet version in here as well, because I think that'll sit better with. Now dry and wet, all that means is that wet is gonna be more affected. It's gonna have more room, more reverb, more delay, something else. Dry is gonna be just the original version without many effects on it. We'll get into effects in a later lesson.
Open your eyes. Open your eyes. Open your eyes. Open your eyes.
Perfect. So now, awesome. Let's grab that. And we're going to have a dry version and a wet version of this. So I'm going to drag both of those in. And what I'm thinking is I'm going to use the dry version on the drop that I'm going to have here and the wet version on the build-up. So this is going to come in later. Let's go ahead and delete that. And notice what I just did there. I just held down Option to drag a clip down and make a duplicate. I didn't actually want to make a duplicate of it, but good quick key to know, just holding down Option and dragging will make you a duplicate. Of course, you can always Command D, but Option dragging allows you to place it exactly where you want to place that duplicate clip. Okay, so I've got a basic structure laid out here on my scenes going vertically down from 1 to 8. So I'm starting with scene 1. Make a couple duplicates here. If you just want to re-trigger something, just click it again. I'm going to go ahead and grab the wet version of this as well, just to give some difference here, okay? Give that a different color here. It's a little bit darker purple maybe.
Open your eyes.
Now, typically in these loop packs, these song starter packs, we could go in here and I found this drum loop here, 125, drum 20, there it is, okay. Now you see it came with a top loops pack as well. Let's see if we have 125, 20. Awesome. So we've got a top loop as well, which means it's gonna not have the kick, maybe not have the toms, not gonna have the lower end material. It's just gonna be the top end of the loop. So your hats, your claps, maybe a little affected percussion, something like that. So I'm going to make this a lighter shade here and just drop these down so that I can bring this back in here. I'm just holding down Option and dragging. So what I've got now, maybe just want drums at the beginning, a little intro. Now when I click these arrows facing to the right on your master channel with these numbers here, these are what are called scenes. So each horizontal row of blocks here, of clips in your session view, each time you click the arrow on your master track, it's going to trigger every clip that's in that horizontal row or that scene within Ableton. If you remove a clip, by default, it'll put a little stop button there. So you'll see an empty clip slot and stop button, so nothing will play from that track. All I'm doing with this clicking over here is that I'm waiting till within a bar, 3, 2, 1, and within a bar of the next 8-bar phrase. And I missed that because I didn't put this enough times here, okay? So on this one, what I'm going to do is, because this one is just doing pretty much the same thing, I'm going to chop this down to just one piece here, just one bar of this, so that the melodics don't change, because these melodics right here pretty much the same thing, so I don't want the melodics of this to change. Perfect, okay? And one more of these here. So I'm gonna drag this end of the loop brace down so I can kind of carve a piece of this loop out to make more of a buildup. So I've taken the loop brace down, now I'm gonna move it over. Great. Perfect, okay. And I'm just gonna go ahead and just give this a different color so I can keep track of these, okay? So, and this one as well, give it a look. They're just a different color so I can keep track of it. So we've got, out of the intro, goes into this little breakdown, unsolo this. Three, two, one. Notice when I clicked it. I clicked it within a bar, and you can see it down here moving. Okay, so between 8 and 9, I'm gonna click 6. Go. Build it up and build it up and build it up and build it up and 3, 2, 1, click it now and that's a little bit too much, so I'm gonna go over here, right click and insert one more scene here. I'm gonna drag this down and drag that down and drag the drum loop down and also Command D this. So you can see multiple ways in which I made duplicates of these clips. Same clip, just a duplicate of it to play in another scene, exactly the way it played in the previous scene. Over here, what I did was I option drag down. Over here, what I did was I hit Command D to make a duplicate. And I did the same thing here, okay? And so I'm just giving space for this drop to happen. Perfect. Okay, so that is the basics of working with audio in Ableton Live. I hope you've joined me in dragging in and warping some loops of your own and getting your own track going. So we've worked with audio in Ableton. Next lesson, lesson 5, we're going to be jumping into working with MIDI, and we're going to use this exact same track and lay some MIDI parts down. Looking forward to it. See you guys then. So for the purposes of this exercise, I'm going to work this vocal into the beat grid to show you the concept of warping.